Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Tech Talk. The topic that we will discuss today is how customers can protect data in S3 using two of our security services and the layered security services from Amazon Macie and Amazon GuardDuty. We'll go over this topic and discuss how customers can leverage these services to provide layered protection around identifying, protecting, and continuously monitoring for risks. My name is Himanshu Verma, and I'm in the business development team for AWS Security Services, and I'm joined with my colleague Ryan Holland, who's the principal industry security specialist. The agenda for today's Tech Talk, we will cover a quick introduction and key capabilities of Amazon Macie and Amazon GuardDuty. We'll dive into how these security services can layer together and protect data in Amazon S3, some example use cases and personas of how customers and their security teams can benefit from these services. Then Ryan will go through a demo and walk us through the services in the AWS console, and also some of the next steps that customers can take to leverage the benefits of these services. With that, let's dive into the key capabilities of Amazon Macie and Amazon GuardDuty and how they relate to Amazon S3. Let's take a quick look at Amazon Macie. What is Amazon Macie? Amazon Macie is one of our security services from AWS's security portfolio that is a fully managed data security and data privacy service, leveraging machine learning and pattern matching to help customers identify and discover sensitive data at scale. There are two distinct features that Amazon Macie provides. One is helping customers identify and discover sensitive data, such as personal identifiable information, PII, at scale. And secondly, helping customers understand what all is accessible and providing them visualization across their data inventory as to what all is public, what all might be shared, encrypted versus unencrypted, so that customers can evaluate their inventory as well. Some of the key benefits that Macie provides are around these four tenets. Number one, when you enable Macie by default, it provides customers full visibility so that they can evaluate their bucket inventory as well as evaluate some of the bucket policies. Macie provides a high-level overview of the total number of buckets, total number of objects, the storage size of those objects, as well as provides a high-level overview of the policies that are set across these buckets. Anytime there are any changes in these policies, customers also receive a real-time notification if somebody is making buckets publicly accessible, or somebody is sharing these buckets, or anyone in the organization is changing policies such as encryption and or replication. These findings are known as policy findings, which are available in near real time and are routed automatically to CloudWatch events and also to Security Hub, which is our centralized monitoring service. Additionally, we have now provided customers full control and flexibility to point Macie to data sources so that they can discover sensitive data. This is done by leveraging Macie's built-in managed data identifiers, as well as allowing customers the flexibility to define their own data identifiers in the form of custom data identifiers. Since this is a managed service, we've taken the onus to provide customers the benefit of a wide range of commonly known data identifiers, which provide them the scale of various different regulatory needs and or compliance needs, and what all would be considered sensitive or PII. From a scale standpoint, Macie is also very simple and easy to manage. It integrates with AWS organizations that allows customers to have a centralized view as well as enforce some of the data governance policies from a centralized management account. Native to AWS console, Macie is now available with full management API coverage that allows customers to easily automate and integrate Macie with either third-party tools and or automated remediation and response actions. All of Macie's findings, both policy as well as classification findings, are reported automatically in CloudWatch events or EventBridge, from where customers can route them to their third-party tools for alerting and notification, or use step functions and Lambda functions to act on objects where sensitive data is found, or on the buckets where sensitive data is discovered. That is a quick high-level overview of Macie. Let's take a look at a high-level overview of Amazon GuardDuty. Amazon GuardDuty is a threat detection service that uses machine learning, anomaly detection, and integrated threat intelligence to identify and prioritize potential threats. There are two core values that Amazon GuardDuty provides. Number one is to identify malicious and highly suspicious activity. And secondly is to help protect AWS accounts, workloads, and also data stored in S3. So from a very high level, if you look at how GuardDuty works, GuardDuty takes in data sources from multiple internal AWS services, such as network sources, which are VPC flow logs or DNS flow logs, API events from CloudTrail events, and also data plane events from S3 data plane events. These sources are automatically routed through an independent channel behind the scenes directly within these services into GuardDuty. There is no additional configuration or any additional steps that the customers have to take, which is a big benefit for customers as this comes in as a managed service. All these events are then routed to our threat detection engines that use both stateful as well as stateless methods to investigate those events. The first one is around threat intelligence. We're leveraging our own native AWS threat intelligence, as well as threat intelligence from our partners, such as Proofpoint and CrowdStrike. We're able to correlate and notify customers of known malicious threats. These could be threat vectors from known malicious IPs or bad domains, which uncover threats and activities such as Bitcoining or cryptocurrency type activity and or command control type activity. The second one is around building a pattern and then identifying anomalous behavior or anomaly behavior. This helps uncover any unusual behavior around data access or unusual behavior around ports and volume of data that is being accessed. All these are then reported within GuardDuty as findings. These findings are categorized by severity so that customers can easily automate and operationalize some of the actions that they would like to take on them. These findings, again, are available to be routed to CloudWatch events, from where customers can easily alert and or notify their security teams. They can also be integrated easily with partner solutions for automated remediation or into third-party SIEM solutions for security operation teams. These findings are also available in AWS Security Hub for further correlation and or security posture evaluation. And if security teams need to further dive down and investigate to identify the root cause of those issues and or build an ongoing pattern, Amazon Detective is one of our other services that can help customers with that. Next, let's take a look at how the combination of these two services can help protect data in Amazon S3. First, since security is critical to our customers, we made it also simple and easy for customers to enable these services. Both Amazon Macie as well as GuardDuty allow customers to integrate these services with AWS organizations so that they can centrally manage these services at scale. Both the services support the centralized administrator or management concept, and customers can delegate an administrator or a management account from where they can easily add member accounts. This can easily scale to hundreds and thousands of accounts. And customers have an easy option to auto-enable these services as new member accounts are being added. Some of the key aspects here to keep in mind: if you are an existing GuardDuty customer, we have recently added a new option to opt in for GuardDuty for S3 protection. That option is also fully integrated with AWS organizations, so customer can easily scale that across all their member accounts. This allows customers and their security teams to have one centralized place where they can monitor as well as take actions on these services. There is also flexibility where you can or cannot have the same management account for either one of these services. That means if you have a data governance office which needs a separate centralized account and a security threat monitoring office which needs a separate centralized account, that flexibility is available. Once these services are enabled, one of the default features that Amazon Macie provides is the ability to evaluate bucket security posture. With this, enabling Macie on all accounts, customers can gain visibility and start evaluating their bucket inventory. This is a continuous feature and automatically updates every day. So customers get full visibility into the total number of buckets, the storage size of objects in those buckets, and the object count. We also easily differentiate and define what all is classifiable so that customers have a good view in the total number of data that they have within S3, as well as the total size of classifiable objects in S3. Then at the control plane level, we are able to monitor any changes that might be happening to the policies of these buckets. We summarize these buckets in various different categories. For example, buckets which might be publicly accessible, where customers might want to prioritize and start doing inspections, or buckets which are unencrypted versus encrypted, and or buckets which might be shared internally or externally with users. Anytime there are any changes made to any one of these policies, we will report policy findings in near real time. Those policy findings can be used to alert and notify the security teams to either approve those actions and or take appropriate actions on those findings. Once customers have centralized view across their bucket inventory, they can then prioritize exactly where they would like to scan for sensitive data. This can be done by configuring inspection jobs. Customers will have the ability to select a target source or a target bucket and then create scheduled jobs. Within the job configuration, we provide customers full control and flexibility to define the frequency of how often they would like to scan the classifiable data. And additionally, they can define the scope of the jobs by providing object criteria information, for instance, object tags, or including or excluding objects that have been modified within a certain time frame, or objects of certain type and size. This gives customers the flexibility to define how much and how often they want to inspect the data. The data inspection leverages pattern matching and machine learning, which then enumerates classification findings in the service. As a managed service, we provide customers a list of managed data identifiers, which are already built into Amazon Macie. So when Macie jobs execute, we're able to identify any financial information, any personal information, for example, first name, last names, or contact information, any national IDs, such as passports, driver licenses, medical information, and also credentials and secrets. These wide range of managed data identifiers are built in, and customers do not need to take any actions on that. They also provide a rich coverage of both the regulatory compliances as well as locations and geographies. If there are identifiers that customers need to define specific to their business needs or customized to their business needs, they also have the ability to define custom data identifiers in the form of regular expressions that can be included as part of the inspection jobs. With this feature, then customers can enumerate what is sensitive in these buckets. Next, Amazon GuardDuty for S3 protection enables Amazon GuardDuty to enable object-level API operations to identify potential security risks for data within your S3 buckets. GuardDuty monitors threats against your Amazon S3 resources by analyzing AWS CloudTrail management events and CloudTrail S3 data events. These data sources monitor different kinds of activity. For example, CloudTrail management events for S3 include operations that list or configure S3 buckets, such as list buckets, delete buckets, and put replication, etc. And examples of data events for S3 include object-level API operations, such as get object, list object, delete object, etc. All of these are taken into consideration automatically, so customers do not need to enable any second logging or any additional logging for this. They are also ingested into GuardDuty automatically through a channel which is optimized for identifying these events and evaluating them for threats. Once we correlate them with our threat intelligence and machine learning for behavioral analysis, we output the findings, and the severity and details of the findings will differ based on the finding type and the permission associated with the bucket. This allows customers with certain benefits. One, it eliminates the need of additional logging that needed to be enabled earlier. Secondly, it also takes away the manual inspection and/or inspection of these logs using third-party security tools, which might not scale effectively. So using GuardDuty for S3 protection now, customers can easily identify some of these threats within the GuardDuty service. When it comes to identifying various different levels of findings and proactively detecting threats to data in Amazon S3, there are three different categories of findings. The first one is policy findings. These might relate to, for example, bucket policy level accesses, or if the buckets are made publicly accessible, etc. An example of this would be a bucket anonymous access granted. A finding like that would inform customers that the listed bucket has been made publicly accessible on the internet because an IAM entity changed a bucket policy or ACL on that bucket. The second category is malicious access, where using threat intelligence, we're able to inform customers if there are known malicious IPs and/or domains that are trying to access the data or discover the data or exfiltrate the data. An example of that could be malicious IP caller, where the finding will inform the customers that an S3 API, such as get object or list object was invoked from an IP address that is included on a threat list. The third category is based on behavior and pattern, which is anomalous behavior. This is where we are able to determine a pattern, then inform customers if data access is requested from unusual locations, or there is a change in pattern of the volume or the bucket access that the customers are requesting or the users are requesting. An example of that would be object read unusual, where the finding can inform customers that an IAM entity in your AWS environment is making an API call that involves an S3 bucket and that differs from the entity's established baseline. All of this is enabled at the account level, and it's automatically and continuously updated for all the buckets in an account. So those are some of the key benefits that customers can leverage and combine the sensitive data discovery as well as threat detection and monitoring from Amazon Macie and Amazon GuardDuty on S3. Now let's dive into some of the example use cases of how security teams can benefit from these features. The first use case is tied to maintaining regulatory compliance. With the continuous inventory evaluation and data governance, Macie enables customers' compliance teams to be fully aware and monitor where the sensitive data resides. Customers can schedule jobs, inspect the data sets, and based on those findings, be fully aware which objects include sensitive data. And accordingly, they can use operations such as tagging those objects where PII is located, and then using those tags to automate data protection that needs to be applied on those objects with sensitive data. This helps customers to comply with regulatory needs such as GDPR, as well as some of the new regulatory requirements like the California Protection Act, CCPA, and or any future regulatory needs that needs to be complied with. The second use case we wanted to highlight is around automating threat response and remediation. Customers' security teams who are responsible for proactively detecting threats and monitoring those threats can leverage GuardDuty along with Amazon S3 to proactively and continuously monitor for threats. When S3 data event monitoring is enabled, GuardDuty immediately begins to analyze S3 data events from all S3 buckets and monitor them for malicious and suspicious activity. When threats are detected, GuardDuty produces detailed security findings to the console and to the event bridge, making alerts actionable and easy to integrate into existing event management and workflow systems, or trigger automated remediation actions using AWS Lambda. Additionally, customers' teams can deliver findings to an S3 bucket to aggregate those findings from multiple regions and to integrate with third-party security analysis tools as well. So this can allow customers to stay ahead of the threats that they might see in their environments. And the final use case we wanted to highlight is around automating response and remediation. Customers' team need a continuous way to identify, to protect, and continuously monitor for risks. Both of these security services, Amazon Macie as well as Amazon GuardDuty, send their findings automatically to AWS Security Hub. AWS Security Hub collects these findings from these security services enabled across your AWS accounts, such as the policy findings from Amazon Macie, as well as the S3 findings from GuardDuty, and is able to aggregate them and correlate them to provide customers a high-level overview of their security posture evaluation, as well as normalizing them into the Amazon security standard format so that then they can be used to take necessary actions. For example, customers can send the findings from Security Hub then to their ticketing tools and or can take automated remediation actions by integrating them with step functions or Lambda functions via the CloudWatch events. That normalized format can also allow customers to further add information or insights to the findings before they are routed to third-party remediation tools. So that is another added value that customers can use to address the use case of automated response and remediation using these two services. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan to walk us through the AWS console and provide us an overview of these two services and the features related to Amazon S3.
Thank you, Macie. And to get started, we will start by taking a look at the Amazon Macie console. So what we're looking at here is the summary dashboard that you get once the service is enabled. Important to note, as Macie mentioned, Amazon Macie integrates with AWS organizations. And so what I'm looking at here is an organizational-wide dashboard because I'm doing this from my organization management account, which gives me visibility into my S3 estate across all of the accounts that are members of my organization. At this top level dashboard, you can see we get the total number of buckets, the total number of objects, and then how many of those objects are classifiable. There are certain object types that we exclude from Amazon Macie when we do sensitive data discovery. These would be things like images or binary executables, movie files, things of that nature. And so we call out how much of the total usage that you have is supported file types versus not supported. And we also have those key policy metrics that we track across all of those accounts. And those are public buckets, the encryption status on the bucket. So what the default encryption policy is, whether or not there's no policy, or if there is an encryption policy, what type of encryption policy is set? Is it using the older server-side encryption with S3 or the server-side encryption leveraging KMS? And then the third part of this dashboard is how you've configured your buckets to allow sharing across accounts. So to analyze these, we're looking at the bucket policies as well as the bucket ACLs. And we're looking for grants to principals in accounts other than the account that owns the bucket. If the grant is to a principal that is a member of your organization, that would be considered shared inside. All right, so you have cross-account sharing in this bucket, but the other account that has access to the bucket is also a member of your organization. We also then look if the sharing is to an account that's outside your organization, we'll consider that shared externally or shared to an outside party. Now, if any of these change such that it kind of to the negative, right? If you take a bucket and you make it public, or if you remove an encryption policy from a bucket, or if you share a bucket externally, all of those activities will generate those policy findings. One other policy finding that we also will generate is if the bucket is replicated to an external account as well. So those are all activities that are monitored as far as how the configuration and security posture of your buckets are set up. The kind of next step on these is to evaluate which one of these buckets you want to go and perform sensitive data discovery on. And as I mentioned, I'm doing this from my administrator account, and so I can pick from buckets across any of the accounts within my organization and create classification jobs on those. The output of those jobs will be findings. And a finding is essentially telling you that we've identified sensitive data within a particular object, and we have different ways that you can view these by buckets, by type, or by job. I'll take a quick look here at looking at findings by a particular bucket and a particular type. So multiple indicates that we identified multiple different categories of sensitive data within this particular bucket. And if I look at any one of these findings and I click on one of them, I'll get some more detail about what was identified within this particular finding. So in this case, we have information about the bucket that it was located in, and then the type and number of occurrences for each sensitive data type. I have created a custom data identifier for email addresses in this case. I have about 90 of those in this object. And then I also had financial information in the form of credit card numbers and personal information in the forms of names and addresses. Important to note, the finding data that you see here, we have the type of sensitive data and the number of occurrences. At no point do we ever store or retain the actual sensitive data itself. We just have the number of times and the type of occurrences. We also include information about the bucket it was in, as well as the object configuration itself, whether the object was publicly accessible, what type of encryption was used on that particular bucket, an object, and then who owned it. There's one other thing I want to make note of here, and this is this detailed result location. This is a secondary output that customers can configure under the settings page, which writes the findings also to an S3 bucket that you own. This is slightly different from the findings that we show in the console and send out through EventBridge, in that those findings that go to your detailed result bucket also include the location of where we identified this particular sensitive data. So for this particular example, which is an Excel sheet, we would give you the column name, the column index, as well as the row number where all of this sensitive data is. Again, we're not going to include the sensitive data itself, but we will include that location within the objects. That way it's easy for you to go and identify. This detailed result output will also include records for objects that did not contain sensitive data that were part of this job. So if we scan an object and does not contain sensitive information, that detailed result acts as an audit log that shows you that it was checked and there was in fact no sensitive data discovered in there. So we'll kind of look and see how we can combine Amazon Macie with the Amazon GuardDuty for S3 protection. You'll notice I have a finding here for one of my buckets. When I've enabled my S3 protection for GuardDuty, which you can do very easily under the settings section, where it allows you to enable on your account if you're the administrator, as well as to manage it across all of your member accounts. So one thing to point out here is if you're an existing GuardDuty customer, GuardDuty protection for S3 does not automatically turn on all of your existing accounts. However, you can do that with just one click here in the console to enable it on all your existing accounts. For all new accounts that get added, S3 protection will automatically be turned on. And for customers that already were using GuardDuty, important to note, there is a 30-day free trial for the S3 protection as well. Once I've got my S3 protection enabled, again, we're going to start applying the threat intelligence, looking for malicious IPs, instance credential usage, and S3 data events. And we're doing this without you having to turn on S3 data events in your accounts. And that's important from both a cost perspective, but it also has a good security benefit in that we're accessing this log data from an internal source. So there's no way that anyone can interrupt our access to that data. We'll immediately, like I said, start applying the threat intelligence and the malicious IPs, looking for potential instance credential use outside the instance to access S3 data, and then also profile the bucket usage themselves, as well as how your individual users interact with those buckets. So in this case here, we have an object read unusual, which is telling me that one of my credentials was used to access a bucket either from an unusual location, or it's a bucket that credential doesn't normally read data from, or it's reading an unusually large amount of data. And in this case, it was actually a combination of all three of those. I downloaded a large number of objects, about 1,500, from a bucket I don't normally download that quantity of data from, and I did so from an unusual location as well. And so we get now information about what happened, what bucket was involved, and then also where this activity came from. So in this case, it came from a proxy server routed out through Germany. And again, all of this information that we see here in the console is also sent out through EventBridge, which allows you to, again, take automated actions on this event as it occurs to raise alerts or generate tickets, or perhaps maybe make modifications to objects themselves from a configuration standpoint for permissions to block future access from that particular user. One other thing I will note here too, from another finding type, is because we're now looking at the instant S3 data events, We can also apply instance credential exfiltration detection to access to S3 as well from a data plane perspective. So in this case, another one of my instance credentials was used to access one of my buckets, and it did so from outside of AWS. So that applies a kind of a threat intelligence type detection to this activity. And that kind of wraps up our console demo for the two services. So I want to take a quick look at next steps. All right, that wraps up our console demo. Just want to kind of talk through next steps here for customers. First and foremost, if you're currently using Macie Classic, so you are a user of the older Macie service, we would recommend that you do migrate over to the new Macie and enable that across all your accounts, leveraging the organization's integration. And same for GuardDuty, right? We have that same easy one-click integration with AWS organizations. And do note for, like I said, existing GuardDuty customers, if you have not turned on the S3 protection, it's very simple to do that in the console with just a single click. Those existing accounts will get the S3 protection for free for the first 30 days. And all net new accounts will have the GuardDuty for S3 enabled by default, and all new accounts do get all the data sources free for the first 30 days. And then do make sure that you understand how you're going to take action on these findings by creating suppression filters for activity that might be benign in your use case, or automating some sort of response using EventBridge to send those to downstream systems to allow you to do ticketing or response when those activities take place. And now we'll open it up for any Q&A that might be, questions that might be had.